When your gut feels off, your whole day can feel off. Activia probiotic yogurts and dailies are a quick, easy, and tasty way to up your gut health game every day. They're deliciously smooth and creamy and packed with billions of live and active probiotics. Your gut is where it all begins, so start with Activia. Enjoying Activia twice a day for 2 weeks as part of a balanced diet and healthy lifestyle can help reduce the frequency of minor digestive discomfort.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, I'm going to talk about something that people ask me, which is how could therapy help me with my one problem, my big problem, which is standing up for myself, right? With my spouse especially. And I will talk about that as soon as I tell you to subscribe. My most recent subscriber episode was 4 Reasons Some Men Hate Foreplay. So if you are a man who hates foreplay, you want to understand this strange species, or you're a woman partner to a man who hates foreplay, then you could figure out all about them and why on that episode, and also over 180 other episodes for only $8.99 a month. What a steal. All right, so sometimes when people are depressed or anxious, which is ironically, of course, who needs therapy, then they say in a negative way, how could therapy help me? Because it really wouldn't change my spouse, and my spouse's behavior is the problem. And I've tried to change my behavior, but you don't understand. My spouse gets upset, and of course, I have to change my behavior right back immediately, and therefore everything grinds to a halt. Okay, so you see, I was obviously setting that up in a way where you would see that that is a cognitive distortion, but here's the thing. If you are a person with low self-esteem or who struggles with depression or anxiety, you are a negative person. You were raised in a negative home, and you were basically taught that the world is unsafe, people shouldn't be trusted, bad things happen all the time. You can't get out ahead of it. It's like the learned helplessness dogs in the experiment that just laid down and they kept getting shocked because they didn't know when they would get shocked. So eventually they laid down and just got shocked all the time. That is the animal analog, sad as it is, for human depression. And when you are raised by parents who are negative, who may have been negative for a good reason, right? They were traumatized themselves. They had bad childhoods themselves. Then they teach you a negative way of viewing the world. And this negative way of viewing the world, it makes you feel paralyzed. That's like a really big feeling when you're depressed or anxious, is you feel stuck, particularly depressed. And you feel stuck and that there are no options. And in one way that you feel stuck is interpersonally. So within your relationship, you feel that you have a very small range of potentially acceptable responses, and everything is kind of based on how your spouse operates. And they are like the weather. You look out the window, the sun is shining, it's raining, there's nothing you could do about it. And people who are very negative in the ways that I'm describing, they tend to feel like their spouse's behavior and personality is like the weather. There's nothing that you could do about it, and you just have to cope with it. So when these people end up in marriages where they're talked down to or rejected or, in any way demeaned or yelled at or what have you, they feel like there's nothing they could do because, this is in quotes, nothing they can do because when they have historically at times in the past tried to stand up for themselves, which may or may not be accurate if a video camera was recording, but either way, they feel that it went poorly, and the outcome variable that they use to assess whether it went poorly is, did the spouse get upset? And the spouse got upset, so therefore they conclude that standing up for themselves was a failure. Now, this was not a failure at all. This was a person that didn't like what was happening. So as I say to guys, for sexual rejection, I'm like, so you're going to try to have sex, so she'll reject you, so you don't have sex? What does that mean? That it's a day that ends in Y? Like, how could it be different than what would have happened if you didn't initiate sex? If you initiate, then there's at least a 1 in 100 chance that you'll get laid, right? And if you don't initiate, then it's the same chance as before. And if she gets upset with you in these sorts of dynamics, it's just a day that ends in Y also. So if you don't stand up to your spouse, they still get mad. They get mad about something else. They get mad about their boss. They get mad about the kids. They get mad about being tired or overwhelmed. They're going to get mad anyway. So understanding that your spouse is going to get mad no matter what you do, if they're that kind of person, is life-changing. And understanding that you were drawn to a difficult personality because of a difficult personality that you experienced as a kid, whether that was a parent or a sibling or what have you, anything, then that too is life-changing. So, for example, let's say that you are in a situation where when you spend money, I have a thing about financial abuse and control. When you spend money, your husband yells at you, right? And he says, why are you so irresponsible? You know that we're saving up for a house. And it was like, $100 at Target every month, right? And you need your shit from Target because it's like forks and stuff. We're not talking about somebody who has like a hobby of like getting like, luxury furs, like we're talking about somebody who's within normal limits for whatever their peer group buys, but gets reprimanded in a nasty way by a spouse. This person is a difficult person anyway. And therapy can help you understand exactly why you were drawn to this person. It can help you delineate an entire pattern of behavior where you start increasingly to understand that this is this person's personality, and also to see that you are an enabler. And of course, if you've read Codependent No More, which I always recommend, you have been under the illusion that you can control this person and make them nicer to you if you figure out the exact right way to act. But yet somehow, despite being an intelligent person, you've never figured it out. You have tried to spend less at Target. You have tried to spend nothing at Target. You have tried to ask him to buy the stuff needed at Target. Whatever it is, somehow there's always a problem. And when you go back and think about it with the therapist who is on your side, not against your husband, but just, thinks that you're a pretty good person overall. It's called unconditional positive regard. Carl Rogers came up with it. Of course, people had come up with it before that, but that's the name. And, meaning that your therapist respects you and likes you. And so you're talking with this friendly person about these patterns. They start to become pretty obvious and objective, and you start to see things very differently. And then you start to say, well, you know what? Why should I kind of get treated like that, right? I mean, I wouldn't want my kids to get treated like that. They see their father reprimanding me. I don't want my kids to see that pattern. What if I just tried to say, no, I actually have to buy those things at Target, and I don't want you to talk to me like that anymore, and I think that we need marital counseling. They'd be like, oh, no way. You wanted to get even madder at me? Oh, my God. He won't do couples counseling either because he thinks all shrinks are stupid. And so, no offense, I don't think you're stupid, but he would, and so that's what he thinks. He is also very smart. So he thinks that he could outthink any therapist. These are all things I've heard, by the way. And also, as I've told you, he doesn't like to spend money. So we can't do that. And then, sometimes as somebody's talking and saying these things out loud, it starts to be like, wait, like, am I literally like a prisoner or a captive? Like, what would happen? And you could talk about it, like actually role play it with your therapist and talk it out. Say, what would happen if I said, well, no, like, I just can't live like this anymore. And, I don't want to be scared of you. And this seems like a bad situation. And I don't want the kids to observe it. And we really need to get into counseling. I'm scheduling counseling for next Thursday. If he wants to stay married, guess whose ass is going to be in counseling next Thursday? Most guys, because you really actually asserted yourself with the help of somebody who is on your side. Now, if you had a loving family that you could talk to about this, you probably wouldn't be listening to my podcast in Loco Parentis, and you probably wouldn't need a therapist. But you know what? A lot of people are not in that situation, right? And if you had that loving family, you never would have been drawn to this guy who goes through your Target receipts in the first place. And he has his own problems. Maybe his house was burgled as a child, and now he's so anxious about things and money and whatever. Good, let him work on his own stuff. But the therapist can help you see that you're a person too. When you say some of these things out loud, you would never want your child to be in the same situation. So maybe you got to take a stand. And what about on the other side? Common thing that men struggle with is the woman says, you know what? I don't want sex. I'm never going to want sex now because you were not nice to me. It started when conveniently the first empathic rupture was 3 years in, at the end of the honeymoon stage. I refuse to learn about the honeymoon stage. I refuse to learn about anything. We're going to be in a sexless marriage. If you leave me, you're a piece of shit, just like your father. This is just kind of common ways that people interact when they're very dysfunctional. And so the guy has historically been like, oh, well, I don't want to be just like my father. Meanwhile, the father's the problem. He's emulating the woman from the father. Like the father, she's right, probably was a piece of shit. Poor guy. He was treated poorly, etc. But now he got somebody difficult like his father. His whole life has been being in opposition to his father. Very common pattern I see with passive guys, as they don't want to be like the asshole father. I have a podcast, When Your Father Out Alphas You. So a way that the wife can always get what she wants, and believe me, she's not thrilled with her life. She's miserable too, so she's not doing this on purpose in any way, is to equate him to the father, and then he'll just, lay down and do what she wants, which unfortunately is not laying down or any sort of activity that involves that. And so basically the therapist works with him to say, how do you want your kids to be? Do you want them to be in a marriage where somebody would ever talk to them like that? When did people start talking to you like that? How did your father talk to you? Do you really think that whatever you did was so bad that you should be with this person in perpetuity who will never touch you again and who will talk to you so demeaning? What happened to your wife that she was spoken to this way? What was her childhood like? Maybe she's struggling really bad too, and if you can't fix this situation, do you want to live forever in an intimacy desert? Does that make sense? Would you want it for your child, etc., etc.? And of course, you can get her into couples counseling because her number one thing is the kids. And believe me, she's going to get into couples counseling, or maybe she'll just leave you, and if she leaves you, you don't have to be with her. And that is priceless in a lot of ways if something cannot be fixed. But many things can be fixed. It should be interesting for anybody who struggles with this, by the way, to realize that almost nobody comes into couples counseling because they're like, hey, hon, what would be a good idea? You know what I want to do? I want to spend a whole bunch of time and money in couples counseling. That sounds super good, especially if we could dredge up all of our past ruptures and talk about them with a stranger. Oh, hon, wow, I can't believe you brought it up. I was going to bring it up tonight too. No, that never happens, never will happen. What happens is finally one person wins and drags the other person in like 75% of cases, and so if you've been thinking that you're uniquely in this situation where your partner refuses to come into couples counseling, let me make sure to tell you that's not the case. But anyway, even let's say you don't get your partner into couples counseling, it can be transformative to talk with somebody who respects you as a person in a way that you didn't get respected growing up, or you wouldn't be in this situation in your marriage, and actually helps you and coaches you through ways to set boundaries and self-advocate so that you are not talked down to, and so you do not pass down this intergenerational craziness to your kids. And that is how therapy can really help you self-advocate and stand up for yourself. Furthermore, this isn't just bullshit. It isn't just that you're going to be putting on a mask. Through talking about your earliest life and experiences, many people start to develop self-compassion for the first time and understand that they were put in very difficult situations as a vulnerable child, not intentionally, but that's what happened, and it impacted you grievously, and now, of course, you have low self-esteem. And understanding that it makes sense why you have low self-esteem is the first step in changing your self-esteem. Because then you see it was learned, it was taught to you, you were sold a bill of goods. So then you could have easily, the same person, been plucked in and put into a family that was healthy, and you got a lot of, praise and love, and everything was kumbaya, and then you would have high self-esteem. It's not something broken in you, which is how many people conceive of it, but rather an appropriate and adaptive response to your surroundings that you can now unlearn in order to heal yourself and thereby be the role model for your kids that you never had. All right, I hope that you guys enjoyed this, somewhat of a pep talk for people who know that they have to work on self-esteem, but they've been too scared to reach out to therapy, to a therapist or a coach. Coaches are great too. I always talk about that. Great coaches at my practice. I'm sure you could find others as well. And I will talk to you guys soon. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day.